Today's conversation is on the art of not trying. The art of not trying, inspired by the teachings of Lao Tzu. Today, I would like to discuss this from the perspective of not trying in relationships. Not trying in relationships. Have you noticed that by not trying to control another person, by not trying to control yourself, what happens is naturally what flows is a harmonious conversation, a harmonious relationship. What you say, body language, voice tonality, what they say, what they don't say, body language, tonality flows naturally. Have you noticed this? I trust you experience this while you're in flow. While you're in flow, there's no need to control as you acknowledge that reality is, we could say, rigged in your favor. And by that I mean very specifically, reality is in harmony with all. By actually doing nothing that is unnecessary, which control is unnecessary as it is an illusion, everything appears to flow naturally, to play out as harmonious relationships. Before we continue, Danielle, Lynn, and I are doing another event in New York City. We did one in Los Angeles recently, and we sold out on the event. And it was a wonderful experience for everybody that attended. Everyone that messaged me afterwards, sent me DMs, videos, etc., reported that as a result of that particular event, which was essentially 4 hours of being in flow, and being in flow in harmonious relationships with everyone. The flow, as we could say, been enhanced in their life. They're experiencing flow more so, and it is playing out also in relationships. And they realize that there's no need to control things. The control is being released more and more so each moment, and it is manifesting as harmonious relationships. So we're doing another one, and we intend to focus more so on relationships. We're doing one in New York City, in Manhattan, January 11th. If you're interested in that, I recommend joining sooner than later, as we sold out quite early when we did the Los Angeles event. I'll link in the description to the offer page. We look forward to working with you at the event. Or we could say playing with you, because here's the thing about it. Have you noticed that when we allow people to be, when we allow ourselves to be, not needing to control people, not needing to control ourselves, what naturally arises is the authentic way of being, the true way of being. We can call this true self-acceptance, radical self-acceptance, unconditional self-acceptance, as we are, perfect now, as love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. That's reality. And what appears are symbols of love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment in the relationships. Have you noticed this? All by releasing the illusory need to control. The art of not trying. The art of not trying to control and force things. So the way we do this is to relax when we think of another person. Relax into the flow of the conversation. Relax the need to try to control the interaction. See, I am aware of what I think. I am aware of how I emotionally relate with the other person, emotional intelligence, and I am aware of my behaviors. And I can feel, and you can feel as well, as you are aware. You have realized the self to be transcendent to any perceived limitations in mind. So you can be aware of your thoughts, your emotional relatability with the other person, and also your body language. And if there's any signs of needing to control, you can drop it right there. This is referred to in the Bible as putting off the former conversation. which is said to belong to the old man, which is the person in mind who thinks in terms of separation. As mentioned, reality is in harmony with you. You are in harmony with people. They are in harmony with you. If it doesn't appear that way, practice what we're talking about here, releasing the need to control. Now, why is it that an individual would think that by trying to control other people or trying to control the flow of nature or trying to control themselves, that it would result in a harmonious relationship? Well, no shame and condemnation. Let's explore this. See, a child is born into this world perfectly as love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. That is all they know. That is their true nature. Now, as they go through experiences in life, they may start to think in terms of separation. In other words, if a particular physical experience does not appear in a particular way, they may suggest to themselves in mind that they are not love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment because of the appearance. So in other words, they're forming beliefs in mind, dichotomous beliefs in mind that suggest that it needs to be this way to experience love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. And if, let's say, the need is not met, then they are not love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. And as they continue to form these beliefs in mind, they may now start to think that they need to control it to be this way to experience love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment in relationships. And no shame and condemnation. We acknowledge that as illusory, as in not needed, as in unnecessary, unreal. Those beliefs are illusory beliefs. Those ways of thinking are what I refer to as illusory thoughts. So, at a particular point, the individual realizes themselves. By that I mean very specifically, by acknowledging themselves to be transcendent to the beliefs, even though they thought that they were the beliefs. They were the contents of mind. Yet, because now we acknowledge that we have a mind, thus we can choose what to place in mind, we can also witness the contents of mind by, as I mentioned earlier, by what the individual thinks, how they emotionally relate, and their behaviors. And by being aware of what the individual thinks, and more specifically, I am aware of what I think, emotionally relate, and behave. I am. The source from which I spring from. I am equals, is, foundational, fundamental reality is love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. As I am whole, complete, and thus reality is in harmony. There's no need to have a particular condition met to suggest that you are love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. You are love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment for no reason at all, beyond these conditions in mind, beyond these thoughts, these illusory thoughts that suggest separation, beyond these beliefs that spawn these thoughts that seem to suggest that if a condition is met, then you can be happy, then you can be blissful, then you can be peace, and if not, then you cannot be love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. Illusory, unreal. So, at a particular point, when the individual realizes the self to be transcendent to the thoughts and the beliefs, the individual can then acknowledge those thoughts that suggest illusions of separation to be unreal, not real, not who they are. So they can then be as they are. Be as they are. Unconditional love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment in the moment by releasing the need to control things, which results from those beliefs. Those beliefs seem to suggest in mind that you need to control the other person, that you need to control yourself to experience harmonious relationships. And what I have realized over the years from personal experience is that is completely unnecessary. So over the years, what I did to purify the mind from the illusory beliefs, from the illusory thinking, is to not try to control things. Because I know that the, let's say, needing to control things arises from the beliefs. It is not me really thinking. It is the beliefs that seem to suggest that by trying to control things, reality is in your favor. That is a condition. Reality is in your favor. You are love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, here to experience. We could say love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. So what do? As I am aware of what I, the individual in mind, can associate to the experience with the other person, I could choose to think for myself, simply put, by not trying to control things. So if thoughts appear in mind that seem to suggest I need to control this other person for the relationship to be in my favor, I release that. I don't identify with that thought. And sure enough, what appears is the conversation naturally flows. I trust you've noticed this as well. Authenticity, what you say, body language, tonality flows naturally and authentically to you. Your way is the best way. It doesn't mean that my way is better than your way and your way is better than my way. I mean, your way is the best way. My way is the best way. Everyone's way is the best way because it all arises naturally from the sure foundation. Love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. So allow it to play out by releasing the need to control, by not trying. There's no need to try to control things, in other words. So what happens then is naturally it plays out as harmonious relationship. In what way? Well, I trust you notice this. As pleasant, surprising ways at times, spontaneous, instant connections with another person. Now, for me over the years, as a result of practicing this, I noticed that when I'm out and about, I tend to naturally meet people easier, and those connections tend to play out as business relationships, dating experiences, new friendships, meeting new people in the neighborhood. I also noticed that people seem to come up to me and start conversations with me, and there's no need to try to force the conversation in a particular direction or try to manipulate or have any agenda. And what naturally plays out then is a harmonious relationship. And it could be a friendship, it could be a business relationship, it could be a dating relationship. It flows naturally. And when it does flow in one of those directions, it feels authentic, natural, not force-based. No side effects of suffering. I trust you've noticed this. So over the years, I thought about this. I said, what was really going on? Well, we tracked it back to, let's say, the person in mind needing to, or we could say seeming to need to control things because of identification to these dichotomous beliefs in the subconscious mind, which they formed growing up. We acknowledge that this is what's generating the unnecessary needing to try to control things. So we can practice then the art of not trying by in the moment allowing the art, which is the harmonious relationship, to play out by not trying. So very specifically, the art, which is the experience of life in relationship. So by that I mean relationships are a form of artistic expression. It's the play of God. So these relationships play out as artful relationships, you could say. I trust you notice this. Beautiful, artful relationships, which you can categorize and say that's a personal relationship, business relationship, romantic relationship. Yet they're artful forms and a lot of fun, joyous, flow-based let's say, relationships. We can say they're flow-based relationships. That's how I like to say it. That is the art. That's art. That is the result of not trying. You see that? The art of not trying. The art being the harmonious relationships which naturally arise by not trying. And very specifically, not trying to control. Now, over the years, I had taken these opportunities more and more so, and by releasing the need to control, the beliefs were also released. So, with respect to thoughts, I don't identify with the thoughts that seem to suggest that I need to control this person. I need to control myself. I let it be. The emotions may seem to suggest as the person in mind is labeling the energy in motion. And no shame and condemnation, bringing awareness to particular beliefs in mind that, let's say, suggest social anxiety. And that's one of the things we find as well, is a person that once avoided having, let's say, difficult conversations because, let's say, they were subconsciously trying to control things, putting conditions in place, suggesting that if the conversation plays out this way, then love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. And if not, then not love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. As those beliefs were released by allowing the emotions to be released, feeling the emotions being released without shaming and condemning, energy in motion, what happened is they naturally engaged in conversations, and they turned out to be flow-based, joyous, mutually harmonious conversations. Isn't that interesting? What they thought of before as a difficult conversation appeared to be a harmonious conversation by releasing identification to that particular dichotomous belief. So that's emotions. Now, behaviors. If the person, let's say, feels awkward and there's awkwardness in the body, let the awkwardness be. There's nothing wrong with you for experiencing body, let's say, in a way that the person in mind is labeling it as awkward. Is it really awkward? Or is the person in mind relating to their body language what they're suggesting to themselves that they're awkward, and thus then further generating illusions of unnecessary suffering, which then can result in them further trying to control things? Simply accept yourself the way you are. So dichotomous beliefs ended up being released. And by dichotomous, it means this way versus that way. See, fundamentally, we could say there is no this way versus that way, or this way is better than that way. It's actually in harmony, and it plays out, we could say, in this way or that way, or a variation in between. Practically speaking, let's say a person thinks, I need to say this for the person to go on a date with me. And if I don't say this, whatever statement, they will not go on a date with me. That's dichotomous thinking. When they allow themselves to be, by relaxing into the flow, they naturally say the authentic thing. And it may be this, it may not be that, or it could be a variation, or it could be something totally different. It naturally arises from the sure foundation of love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, which is reality appearing to be in our favor, which plays out as the art of not trying. That's what I mean by the art of not trying. The art appears as artful conversation, let's say, authentically, naturally, by not trying to force, not trying to control. What is the real need to control things when authentically, naturally, reality is in our favor? To imagine otherwise would be unwise, generate illusions of separation, which play out then as what the person calls inharmonious relationships. Yet, actually, authentically, what plays out by releasing the need to control is authentically harmonious relationships. How so? Over the years, in the earlier stages, by trying to control, it played out as once in a while I would have harmonious relationships. And that would be a conditional relationship. So what I mean by that is maybe it would appear harmonious in the beginning, then a whole bunch of suffering afterwards. And then a whole bunch of relationships where I was trying really hard to have harmonious relationships by trying to control, which again is illusory because that arises from the belief. The person in mind is trying to control. And you are not the person in mind. You transcend the mind. You can think for yourself. I am aware of what I think. So that's stated. Even though, let's say, I was trying to have wonderful relationships, I was trying too hard, you could say, to have wonderful relationships, which didn't play out that way. Once in a while, harmonious relationship, temporary for a moment, and then a bunch of suffering afterwards. And then over the course, by releasing the need to control, what happened was right now I'm surrounded by harmonious friendships, harmonious relationships in the various areas of my life, business relationships, client relationships. And I am, you could say, way more as I am than I have ever been before. So essentially, by not trying to control, what happens is we can say we align with the natural flow. We actually realize what is also referred to in Romans 12:2 in the Bible. Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test what God's will is. Good, perfect, pleasing will. The pleasing, good, perfect will. It means that the true nature of reality is, we could say, flow-based. And it plays out as flow-based relationships. It's interesting. We can also call this, and it's referred to as wu wei, not doing the unnecessary, allowing things to happen. What we appear to do, what we appear not to do, naturally flows from the sure foundation of being as we are. So we can return then to the source, through the simple practice of releasing the need to control. Again, in summary, I am love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. Thus, I am, knowing that I am, love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, from the sure foundation, aware of what I, the individual, thinks, emotionally relates, and behaviors. And from there, I am aware of what I seem to suggest in relation to the other person, in relation to myself, in relation to our interaction. And if there's any need to try and control, I do nothing. I stop doing that. I do nothing, as in release that need. Thoughts no longer identify with it. Emotions allow them to be released. Behaviors accept myself the way I am, unconditionally. And the conversations flow, body language flow, the relationships flow. And as I continue to do this, as you continue to do this, which is simply being as you are, what happens is we witness it more so that the natural flow is in harmony. And it plays out as harmonious conversations, harmonious relationships. And as mentioned, what could appear as difficult conversations or conversations that a person avoided because they were afraid, which again, this fear arises from these dichotomous beliefs of condition, saying one way is better than the other. What happens is the person engages in conversations with people, and if they say, let's say, whatever response to whatever question they ask them, maybe they ask them on a date. If the person says, yes, I'll go on a date with you, great. If the person says, I won't go on a date with you, great. I'm not interested in going on a date with you, great. It doesn't change the fact that they are love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. So what this practically plays out then, and I've seen this at times as well, is that same person that said they weren't interested in going on a date with you tends to come back later on and say, you know what, let's get together. Or you end up meeting someone and it's a harmonious match. And so what I found then is just by releasing the need to control, everything appears, we could say, as it should, to be in harmony, as it always was. As it always was in harmony. I surrender into the flow. This is the way of living, we could say, the way. And again, it doesn't mean that my way is better than your way or your way is better than my way. It's actually the way playing out in harmony. Now, through this practice, what happens is the unity of the seeming opposites. The unity of the seeming opposites. See, what I've realized from life experience is anything that seems to be in conflict can actually be reconciled. There is a reconciliation point, or a harmonious point, or a point of harmony. What could appear as contradiction or being in conflict, let's say masculine and feminine, for an example, is actually reconciled individually within, and then it plays out as a harmonious relationship. And the way we get to that point, let's say, of reconciliation, which is our true nature, is by releasing the need to control that seems to suggest one way of doing things is better than another way. Is it really true? Do we really need to look around to see what other people are doing and then form conclusions that we need to do the same thing, which is illusory? What I mean by that is only you can imagine how what other people do relates to you. Just as, for example, the child in the earlier stages looked around and based on experience formed beliefs in mind. Do we need to continue doing that? Or we could say, is it authentic? Which it actually is, to go within and honor intuition, from which naturally what arises is the authentic way. So how does one listen to their intuition then? How does one listen exclusively to their intuition, remain as they are, by releasing the mental chatter that seems to cloud out intuition, the emotional turmoil that seems to cloud out, let's say, intuition, the convoluted behaviors, which the person then considers themselves to be awkward, etc., social anxiety, by releasing it, by releasing the need to control. As the need to control is released, practically speaking, what it plays out is reconciliation of the seeming opposites. The reconciliation happens within. And as the reconciliation continues to happen, then the dichotomous beliefs are released, and what naturally appears is more so each moment with increasing frequency on a continuous basis, harmonious relationships in the form of friendship, business relationships, romantic relationships, etc. And it's your style. You don't need to ask people what their style is and then from there try to force yourself to do their style of relationships. It is what you consider to be flow-based relationships, authentic relationships, natural relationships, all the result of not trying to control. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's conclude this with an auto-suggestion to further encourage. You can say, by remaining as I am in flow, relationships appear to be in harmony with me, as existence itself is in harmony, in a perfect state of love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, which arises as and appears without as the art of relationships, artful business relationships, artful romantic relationships, artful friendship relationships, artful family relationships, continuing to appear more so from the sure foundation that I am love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, with increasing frequency on a continuous basis as far as the senses perceive.